As we continue looking into the issues leading up to Nigeria's 2023 general elections, joining me now is Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, which is one of the country's leading civil society groups. Yemi, welcome to this. I wanted to say Business Edge, and that's what happens when you're doing multiple things. I apologize. Yemi, welcome to Politics HQ.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I want to pick up from the conversation I had with Professor Chidi Odinkalu, and I believe you heard him towards the tail end when we were talking about the down ballot elections, and that's of course the governorship and the state houses of assembly election. In terms of the focus there, in terms of even the mobilization there, what do you think we need to do? Because the fear that many people have is that once the presidential election is over, many Nigerians are going to turn around and go home without consideration for the March 11th elections.
I think, well, let me take that back. I think certain governorship elections will get people to come out. Either governors that are vying for their second term, or governors that were maybe unpopular and at the end of their term, and there's a popular candidate that people want to vote for. And then obviously there's going to be, as Chidi said, there's going to be the bandwagon effect on what happens at the presidential election. Who's the winner? If people's candidates win, maybe people would ride on that and show up for elections. State House of Assembly always gets fewer votes because people don't pay attention to the candidates. So if you're not voting by party and you want to do, I want to vote candidates, if you don't know who the candidate is, you likely won't vote.
Okay, so coming to the present time now, there's still fuel scarcity in many parts of the country. Naira scarcity continues to affect the economy as well as Nigerians. Even today, the queues in front of many banks in the general area around us seem to have even increased once again. But we also see that a lot of election research shows us that it's the people who are dissatisfied, the people who are angry about how things go that end up coming out to vote. So how do you think the issues around the Naira scarcity and the fuel scarcity will play into motivating Nigerians to vote?
Of things. So part of what you said in terms of the queue is also because a lot of banks are having problems with their apps. So if you can't transfer and can't use POS with your card, then you are forced to go back into the bank to try and figure out what you can do. Which is why I think the queues are coming back a lot more maybe than they were earlier in the week. So that's one. Two, yes, people who are dissatisfied, but it's playing out, I believe, in different ways because of the sort of southwest vibe that people are saying, because it seems to be targeted at those who are actually voters are basically saying that it's not going to move them. And you can in Lagos, everybody from the former chairman of the party, Oshiomhole, to the governor of Ogun, and his own rally, everybody hitting themselves with an APC policy. I think that's very interesting, such that will people then carry it over and believe them that it's Buhari doing this thing? Therefore, the party shouldn't be penalized for what is in effect an APC policy. You see what's happened in Kaduna, where El-Rufai tried to say, you know what, ignore Buhari and continue to spend money. And people told him that, no, you don't get to do that. Why would we listen to you and not listen to Buhari, which I thought was very interesting. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how it will play out, but it will play out in different places in different ways.
So that leads me to ask that if many of us believe that 2015, I beg your pardon, was a referendum on the PDP's leadership, which allowed an opposition party to form and take basically over from the PDP, how much of a referendum on the APC's leadership is this election going to be, especially as you made mention of this sort of attempt by some to separate the president and the party from each other in order to not hurt the chances of the APC's candidate, Bola Tinubu. So in terms of it being a referendum for the APC, how much do you think that's really going to come into play?
Certainly not compared, because if it was in play, Asiwaju wouldn't have, I believe, the same kind of momentum that he has. So the fact that again, as Chidi said, Buhari is not on the ballot, it's one step out of it. But I think more fundamentally, there is the sense that it's very different. It's same party, a northern candidate versus a southern candidate, and a sense that this candidate is different for whatever reason, I don't know. And this larger narrative that we have this season, that we pay attention to the candidate, not the party. I dare say that APC has probably benefited from that as well. That it's really not a party referendum, so to speak. 2015 was a clear referendum, also because there were only two parties. So if you did not want Jonathan and the PDP, your only option really was Buhari and the APC. But this time, in some parts, you would say you have four candidates. And I always like to throw Showore in there because that's important, because he has maintained his stance as a non-establishment candidate. And of all the other, the 18 minus 4, that gives us 14. Of the other 14 candidates, I think Showore has also been the most vocal, I would say, of the other 14. But, so unlike 2015 where there were 2, now you have literally 4. So it's not as clear we don't want this, we're going for this narrative. Even though Labour has quite frankly tried to present Peter Obi as a non-PDP, as the alternative, so to speak. If you were angry, don't do the parties that we've tried before, try this guy. Yeah. So yeah.
It's interesting because when you look at the face of it, you say 4, some people say 3, the 4th being, of course, Rabi Musa Kwankwanso of the NNPP. And a lot of people are interested in some of this alignment and realignment we've seen in the past few days with some state-level parties subsuming themselves into opposition parties. What do you make of all of that, Yemi, in terms of the actual end result of all of this and sort of the possible or the potential for a dark horse, not movements, but an influence overall in the elections? What do you make of it?
And actually, initially, I thought that Kwankwanso would make a deal of some sort. So align with the presidential candidate to ensure that he got Kano, because Kano obviously is very important to him in controlling Kano, like being his party being in power in Kano. But it's Wednesday. We're literally almost on Thursday. He hasn't done that. And as somebody explained that he genuinely thinks that he has what it takes. He wants to be president. He wouldn't, I guess in a sense, wouldn't throw away what he's trying to build, let me put it that way, for anybody else. Because also maybe ultimately doesn't think it'll be worth it. Because if he does a deal and he wins, it would always be said that it was because he did a deal. But if he's very confident in his ability to still win the governorship election in Kano, he's obviously not going to win presidential. But if he's able to win that one, then he literally has more street cred, that he didn't do a deal and he got Kano. And as someone described him, that his belief in himself and maybe ego, if we use that word, is enough for him to take that chance. So that's one part of it, I would say.
And it's interesting because that chance is one that he's also going to ride out to the very end, is what it looks like. So I spoke about the issue, or rather Professor Chidi Odinkalu brought up the issue of debates and the fact that we have not succeeded in having a full-on presidential debate as possible. And I know we've spoken about this, but beyond the issue of debates, what is it that the issues of this particular campaign really have been? So when you compare this election with previous ones, have we been successful in making this more of an issue-based campaign season than before? Are we succeeding in ensuring that what matters to voters has been making it to the top of the discussion list for candidates when they're doing their press rounds, when they're doing their rallies? Has this been more issue-based than before?
But actually, to answer the question you had asked earlier before we come to debates about states and alignments, I don't think we've seen, ADC has folded into Labour, at the national level. Meanwhile, at the state level, some candidates are still staying. Lagos, for example, the governorship candidate is maintaining his stand. A friend of mine that's running in Benue, she's maintaining her stand. So she's Peter Obi, presidential, ADC, House of Rep. And I think you see quite a bit of that. How that influences how people vote, we won't know. But with the narrative that it's candidate, not party, it might actually work. Now, today, again, is Wednesday going into Thursday. The fact that the main one that we've seen so far is just ADC into Labour. 3 other parties collapsed into PDP on Saturday at Atiku's final rally, but relatively lightweight parties. I think ADC was probably the strongest of the lot that's collapsing. Now, at the state level, though, actually maybe Accord in Oyo as well, I think they're also collapsing, possibly into PDP, I guess, is where they're going. So it's very interesting, as you rightly said, how at the state level, people are just aligning, because ultimately it's about winning and not finding where you are in that space. Now, to your point about debates, it is very unfortunate that Africa's largest democracy, blah, 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 all the things we talk about, was unable to get people who are trying to lead it. Literally, as Fashola explained, the people who are applying for jobs. So you have these 3-4 leading candidates who are applying to lead a country of 200 million people, 94 odd million voters, and they were unwilling to make themselves available for a debate. Yes, Peter Obi can say, I said I would do it. Atiku can say, I said I would do it. But at the point it became, if this person is not coming, I'm not coming. If this person is not coming, I'm not coming. Because ultimately they realize that nothing is going to happen. Like we can dance around and dance around it, but nothing is going to happen. We need to do better, I think, as citizens in terms of making it a demand. I'm excited, though, that at the governorship level, we have a lot more states that are engaging. We've had debates in Akwa Ibom, or has had 3, for example. We've had in Kano, we've had in Kaduna, had in a few other states. I mean, there's still 2 weeks before you might see a bit more. So at the gubernatorial level, I'm excited that the culture continues at that level, but that people vying for president literally just say, we're not going to do it, and the heavens will not fall. It's quite unfortunate.
All right, Yemi, before I let you go, there's still concern, and there are still several concerns that have been raised. Now, the ghost of postponement has reared its head, but INEC has said this election will not be postponed. But we know that we had postponements in previous elections. Aside from that, INEC also did raise concerns that the inability of banks, which you mentioned earlier, to distribute enough of the new cash could make it difficult to pay ad hoc staff and even security guards needed to operate the thousands of polling stations for both presidential and parliamentary elections on Saturday. As it is, voting will also not take place in more than 200 polling units across the country in places such as Imo and Taraba, 2 of Nigeria's conflict-prone states. And INEC says this is because of concerns over security. And then elsewhere, impediments have threatened voter turnouts as some Nigerians are yet to collect their permanent voters' cards with just days. And that at this point, that was less than a week. But now, we're just days, 72 hours away. We've had Nigerians in diaspora come home to be able to participate and somehow run into roadblocks and obstacles. When we look at the time ahead of us, less than 72 hours to this democratic exercise, the largest on the continent, do you have any final concerns? Or at this point, it should be like a wedding. You've done what you can do. We hope for the best, and we hope for the best outcome.
No, not at all. Far from a wedding, because at the end of the day, a wedding is ultimately about 2 families and how they make it go. This is about the whole country. And given all the intrigues that we've seen leading onto the elections, we need these elections to happen on Saturday. Because I'm not quite sure that as a country we can take any more of this intrigue and tension. And you spoke about the Supreme Court judgment. Are we taking old notes? Are we not taking old notes? People able to buy food and whatnot. That's one. As you rightly said, INEC will always say they're ready until they are forced to say they are not ready.
Yeah. And
whatever it is that forces them to do that. Politics, government, whatever, sabotage, whatever name you want to give it, they always say they are not. So them saying they're ready, as you rightly said, is great, but we won't know until Saturday morning that we're actually having elections. Number 3, I think the possibility of sabotage, quite frankly, is there. INEC says it has, CBN said they'll give them the cash they need. I'm assuming that they have the cash they need because they haven't said they don't have it. Now, even if transportation is always a big thing. So you're ready to pay. And the driver of the bus decides, I'm driving. I really just don't feel like it. I have a headache. Like, what happens then? Especially in areas where there's already a bit of suspicious. If you take Lagos, so you then have materials, for example, if they do arrive at places late, what does that mean? Some candidates have been said that the likelihood of them winning is tied to low voter turnout. And we know from history that low voter turnout is usually people are really invested. So die-hard party members or people who are going to put themselves out on a limb, that even though materials arrive at 12, they're still there waiting. But it'll be interesting to see a lot of the new voters, the energy, young people who want to participate, diaspora people who flew in. 8:30 you arrive to vote, 10:30 nothing, 11:30 nothing, 1 o'clock nothing, materials are coming. Are they still waiting? Or Beavers misbehaves and you're waiting for a replacement. Do you still wait behind? So it'll be interesting to see. Those, for me, would be areas of concern. Obviously, Beavers technology, hopefully it holds up, because if it doesn't hold up, that in and of itself and the agitation that might come with that would also put people on edge. So a lot that could possibly go wrong, but as rightly said, let's dot our I's, cross our T's, and arrive Saturday morning hoping for the best.
Yes, and the saying goes, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And I know 93.4 million registered voters are really, really hoping for the best in this situation. Yemi Adamolekun, thank you so much. I know we'll be talking to you throughout the coming days as well, into the elections and even post-election, to look at some of the issues that come up. So we always appreciate your time, and I want to say a very big thank you to you tonight.
Thank you for having me.